Well, good morning, or afternoon, or evening, or night, whatever time it is, wherever you are. I'm Tracy Apps, also known as Taps, many places on the internet, and I am coming to you from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, US of A, where there's lots of snow. Wherever you are, I hope you're good. Hope you're doing good. Or not. That's okay too. But at least safe being. That's what we can ask, right? So, hey, how you doing? Do you hate this question? I'm doing awful. I'm doing terrible. Don't ask me that. Have you felt this kind of reaction to this question last year? Well, yes. This I found video of myself. Last year, I want to say this was March, November, the 78th. Well, maybe 79th, whatever. It was a Thursday. I know because the weekend it flooded more. So what did your 2020 look like? My typical day kind of rotated around, well, many of these things. So I ate way too many cookies, put together way too many puzzles. And according to a bag of chips, I am a family of 4. Whatever. Just everything. I lost my grandma in May, but we didn't have a chance to have a funeral. So we had a funeral in November. So I felt this grief was just like hanging over unprocessed. I was discombobulated all over the place. Sad, upset, disillusioned, and just disappointed by people and actions and the world. Then feeling despair and like anxiety because of the state of the world and wanting to do something, but a complete lack of motivation just takes over, and I felt ashamed because I couldn't do anything, and anxious and avoidant, and spent hours on TikTok. And normally I have my battles with my persistent depression, which had that. Then I add in some little seasonal depression, add in that grief, and my sudden loss of my job and my relationship during the middle of a pandemic. And now, the cherry on top is the added COVID pandemic depression, which I don't know how to handle that because that's new. And now I'm trying to keep up with the news, trying to be a responsible adult, and I still can't because of the motivation, energy thing. And, but yet I'm still obsessively researching scientific studies and stats and all those kinds of things. And I know perfectly well that human contact and connection is crucial for my mental health. And yet I was so overwhelmed and burnt out that I couldn't do anything about it and even avoided people. So instead, I sat on my couch and ate dairy-free ice cream. I mean, just to name a few. I mean, it's a standard day. Anyone else? Well, hence why this talk. Our brains are actually working fine. You know that? What? What do you mean? Well, turns out brains are complex and weird. So, there's a lot of things that are just happening without us even knowing it, just happening automatically. And so I wanted to make this talk because of this. But first, I want to reiterate something. You are not broken. I am not broken. We are not broken. I spent much of the year just blaming myself, beating myself up because I couldn't get back to my normal state. I couldn't get back to that. I used to have energy. I had ambition. I had focus. I was learning. I was motivation, all this stuff. I was beating myself because I couldn't get back to that. Hence why I had to write this talk, because I needed to hear it. I needed to hear this. And I have a feeling that I'm not the only one. So let's look at a little bit what's happening. So our brains are complex and they receive so much information. It is impossible to process all of that information. Our brains can't even. They cannot. It's just not possible. So instead, there's shortcuts and a bunch of other stuff that kind of goes on automatically, so we don't get eaten by a bear. So let's explain. Let's go back to science and biology class and look at our brain. Our brain has all of these different regions and parts, and each of them has their own functions that they perform. So things like the cerebellum that handles your balance and coordination or lack thereof, your rhythm, and that kind of the perception, the spatial perception around you. Then you've got your temporal lobe, that's kind of that speech, that emotions, behavior, short-term, long-term memory. And then there's these other parts, one that just handles like the visual system, recognizes letters, the sensory information, another part, touch, taste, smell, temperature. But the most important to this talk, especially, and one of the most developed, we're going to look at the frontal lobe. So the part right in the front of our brains. This is a pretty complex area of the brain. It handles a lot of different things. It's a wide range of things that it handles. So things like that complex abstract thinking in the future, planning and organization and reasoning, regulating our emotions and our attention. All of these things happen in that frontal lobe. And we can even look deeper. They break the frontal lobe up into three main areas: the prefrontal cortex, the premotor area, and the motor area. So what do each of these do? Well, the prefrontal cortex, this is all those cognitive behaviors, our personality, all the decision-making, future planning, the complex kind of thinking, all of the stuff that I have been feeling that I have lost during 2020 and the pandemic. All of the stuff that I was frustrated about kind of happens in that prefrontal cortex. And then the other two areas, that premotor and motor area, they kind of work together. And the premotor area is like the preparing your muscles for the action that you're going to do. So preparing to put that toothpaste on your toothbrush. And then the motor area, it actually generates the neural impulses down your spinal cord, and now you have toothpaste on your toothbrush, hopefully. So, if everything's working correctly, right? Well, this talk is going to focus a lot, mostly on the prefrontal cortex. Because like I said, these were the things that I really struggled with. I feel like I just failed or lost them. So why are we doing this? Why are we looking into this? Well, this is science. So let's explain. So going back to a bear situation, right? Whoa, we've got a bear. He doesn't look happy. Our brain now is taking that input, and now it's like, okay, what's more important? Maybe I should add a little more to my 401k or run away. I'm going to say that run away is the correct answer. That is more important in this situation. In this case, our brains really need that speed and efficiency. Efficiency is key. Otherwise, we have gotten eaten by a bear while we are thinking about our 401k. So, our brains are smart because they do these things. Well, sometimes. At least they're efficient because it takes a lot of these things and helps us out automatically without us even asking it to. So let's take that situation. Got bear, stress, and your brain's like rerouting, and it's taking that blood from your prefrontal cortex and rerouting it to that and powering up your fight or flight mode. Giving you that energy, that adrenaline, get your muscles going so you can run faster, jump higher, all of these things, right? Great. The system worked. This is a good thing. We ran away from the bear. This is what our stress system is set up for, right? Well, let's look at 2020, though. It's more like bear, 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 bear. Now this is less good. This is not what our stress response system is built to handle. Let's go back to our frontal lobe again. So everything's functioning fine. Everything's balanced. We've got our blood flow that is keeping the functionality of our frontal lobe in check. We're doing great. And then all of a sudden, breaking news. This crazy thing happened. Oh, geez. Oh, wait, now everything's on fire. Oh, wait, what? Injustice. Wait, I need to, what happened on Twitter now? Hurricanes. Murder hornets? Wait, murder hornets. You said, yeah, so now we're bear. We're taking all of these things and our brain is responding to them in that stress response. And it's just ticking away, just suffocating out these functions like our future thinking, our abstract thinking, our organization, our reasoning, attention, control, all of these things, the things that I've been struggling with, they're not getting the resources they need to function correctly. So I was getting so frustrated with myself. I was just beating myself up. I used to have energy. I used to have motivation. I was planning. I had it. I was planning for my future. I was good at it. I was learning things. I was feeling like I had control. I hit my stride. I was doing good. And then I just couldn't. Well, I mean, this is why. And turns out these things are out of my control. Doesn't mean I'm helpless against them, but I cannot control them. And that was the reminder I really needed. And that comfort. I'm like, oh, I shouldn't beat up myself because these things my brain is working correctly. But wait, there's more. You think we're done? No, just like 2020, we're going around again. But no, there's a lot of other things that are at play. So this stress response, this is just one piece of the puzzle. So why is there no toilet paper? Anyone else wonder? Well, let's look a little bit closer at cognitive bias. These kind of drive our actions and our behaviors. So first, what is cognitive bias? What are these? It's a way that our brains receive and perceive and process that input. Again, we have so much input, so much coming at us that it is impossible to process it all. It's that too long didn't read part of our brains. It's the shortcuts. It's some of these things like, oh, I know that fire is hot. I won't touch it. You know, those kinds of things that we've learned, things that happen automatic. Now, ultimately, we're creating our own subjective reality because of how we perceive the input is going to be different than how someone else perceives the input. So our behaviors are being driven by this. So there some of these things that we're like, why is this happening? Well, there's actually reasons because of this cognitive bias driven behavior. So, and I said, cognitive bias, it's not all bad. The shortcuts, they have their benefits, but they can lead to this distorted view of the world and this illogical or rash decisions and actions can happen. So let's look at some of these things that are at play. First one, talk about action bias. So now this is where, all right, under stress, the need to make some sort of action, to do some action, whatever it is, it could be beneficial, it could be related to the actual stressor, or it could not, but just doing anything at all is better than doing nothing. So, in this case of the toilet paper, the action taken was the hoarding of supplies of the toilet paper and food. When in reality, there was no threat of a shortage if everyone hadn't already bought up all of the toilet paper. So, and now this is magnified by the bandwagon effect. So this need or desire and drive to jump on the bandwagon and do what most other people are doing. So then that just magnifies this, and now we have no toilet paper. Representativeness heuristic. Say that 5 times fast. Now this is a phenomenon that it's this disconnect where we are overestimating the probability of something that's very low risk, and we underestimate something that has very high risks or high probability. So think about there is a very small percentage chance that I will be a victim of a terrorist attack. But because of that small percentage, that possibility, we have the security measures in place. We have these processes. We do all of these things. We take our shoes off. All because of that small percentage. That's fine. Absolutely. We should take things seriously. The flip side, though, is the underestimating of something that has a high probability of like underplaying something that is affecting millions of people in very catastrophic ways. And we have people throwing big parties. This disconnect is something that falls under this heuristic here. Substitution bias. This one actually is funny to me. It's just like it sounds. You're substituting something. You're substituting solving a big problem and solving a smaller, easier one instead, because you can do that. So think about this. We've got our big complex problem. The big complex problem is that the healthcare system in the United States is very flawed. It is unjust. It needs a lot of fixing. That it needs to be solved. Well, let's substitute a solution. Well, we added hand sanitizer by the door. So, done. So, it's that, oh, it's too big. I can't. So I'm going to take a nap instead. And we all do it. How many of you just took a nap instead of... Yeah. And these are just a few. These are just a handful of the biases and processes and things that are at play here. These and here's some more of them. Like this, my favorite is like this telescoping effect. You know how at least anyone around my age, we think that 2000 was just like a couple of years ago. Well, it's this disconnect of, well, we think things just happened recently, but in actuality, they happened far away or longer, longer away than we thought. And things like the ostrich effect, where we just put our head in the sand. These are kind of some of these things. I encourage you. There's so many cognitive biases. I encourage you to look them up sometime, when you have time on your hands. It's fascinating reading. Well, nerdy, fascinating reading, but fascinating. Very interesting to kind of understand why we do things that don't make sense. A lot of them are explained through cognitive bias. Okay, finally. Now, don't forget, this prolonged, this exposure to stress that's constant, the bear every 5 minutes, this is literally changing our brains. It is literally changing our brains and negatively affecting our health. And our stress response system was just not cut out for this. So it's kind of working against us in this situation. So remembering that we're not set up for this constant and continuous stress. So know that this is working against you and not under your control. And second, that ongoing trauma, living through that, it's like a petri dish. It provides this perfect environment for developing complex post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms. Literally like the same. And I've been reading some of these emerging studies, and they've been coining the term post-COVID stress disorder, which is PTSD, but it's a communal one. It's something that's shared by a population, and in this case, a global population. So a trauma that we all share, we're dealing with, and we're kind of carrying around constantly, and it's hanging over our heads wherever we go. And finally, keep in mind, so the core of this trauma is disempowerment and disconnection from others. Does that sound familiar? It's pretty much my experience all of 2020, losing control and power of everything that I thought I had. Frustrated with that. And I'm disconnected, so disconnected from others, both unintentionally and intentionally. And basically, we're in just a constant state of battling against a trauma response. And that's exhausting. So we're tired. We're not broken. Remember this. You're not broken. Dealing with just one of these things that I mentioned for a month would be hard. But now we have been drowning, constantly pelted from every side and angle for a long time, constantly, from these external forces that are coming together, banding together like the Power Rangers, and making it incredibly hard for our ability to function. They're working together against us. Now, and I need to continually remind myself this, because like I said, I was frustrated. I was just upset at myself for not having control, or not being able to do this, or taking a nap instead of this, or all of these things, or just staring at a wall. But a lot of these things were not under my control. A lot of the things that I was frustrated with were not under my control. I'm not broken. You are not broken. We are not broken. We're just tired. And we have good reason to be. So I want to emphatically remind you and myself, be nicer to yourself. You're doing great. It may not seem like it, but you are. Thank you for listening. Now, I'd love it if you keep in touch. I would be happy to talk more, answer questions of my research that I have for this, or just geek out over some of the science behind our behaviors and emotions. Some of the links on here, you can find everything on linktree/taps. These slides are up on speakerdeck.com/taps. So please connect with me, talk with me, and thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And be nice to yourself, because you're doing great. Keep on being awesome. Thank you.